Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. So in today's video, we're going to be playing with our gel press, we're going to be doing some gel printing, and then I'm going to show you how I've turned it into a card. So I'm going to be using some new products from Rubber Dance. So particularly I'll be using those Loose Florals 2024, and I'll be using the Mix It Up 6 stamp set as well. They've also had some new stencils as part of the release, but I won't be using those today, but I just wanted to share those with you. So I've got my 6x6 gel press, and if you've not used a gel press before, this is how it comes. You've got the 2 acetate sheets that protect it when it's in its packaging, and I think the best way to store it is just to keep it in its original packaging. It just makes sure that it stays nice and protected, doesn't get squished. And it's like a big slab of jelly. So if you've not played with one before, that's how it feels. It's like really, really squishy. And so we're going to just pick up the video now here with me mid-printing session. So I've added some black acrylic paint to my non-stick mat, and I'm using my brayer to ink up my stamp. You could use an acrylic block here if you prefer, but I'm just using my fingers to stamp the stamp down. I find that works just fine. And you're not looking for perfect stamping. You're not going to get that on your gel press, so try not to worry about perfection. I think that's why I do like gel printing from time to time, because it just allows you to be creative, play around, and you're not worried about a perfect finish, and you're probably never going to be able to replicate what you make again. So that's also another of the joys of gel printing. They really are one-off prints. So I'm just coming in with this flower stamp here from the Loose Florals stamp set, and I've just stamped that again. Now in between these layers I am letting the paint dry. So once the black paint was dry, I've then come in with this acrylic paint from IndigoBlu, a little paintbrush, and I'm just adding some paint to those flowers. And again, I'm not being too particular about making sure it's perfect. I just want to get some colour down. And then again, I'm going to use some red metallic paint from IndigoBlu for the centres of those flowers. I then left this to dry before coming in with a little bit of extra red stamping. I'm using the textured part from Mix It Up 6. Paint to my and again, I'm just using my brayer and my non-stick and I'm going to use one of the heart textured stamps. This just added a little bit of extra background interest. However, I don't really again, I'm just using my brayer here, and then I'm just going to use my fingers. Once all of that paint is dry, I'm then coming in with some pink and some yellow paint. Again, I've just cleaned off my brayer, and I'm just going to lightly brayer that all over the images. If you don't allow the layers to dry, then they will mix together. So it is important to just wait for each layer to dry. And then the final layer that you add, when the paint's wet, you can then do the pull. And so that is the print that this created. I was happy with it. I kind of liked where it was going, but I'm going to give it another go. And this is the print that we end up turning into a card today. So again, I'm just using my brayer to add some paint to the stamp. This gorgeous postcard stamp, by the way, is from the Mix It Up 6 stamp set from Rubber Dance, and I absolutely love it. I just love the fact that you've got the postmarks, you've got text. So yeah. Again, I'm just coming in with a flower from the Loose Florals stamp set just to add some floral background patterns. And then once that black paint is all dry, I've then come in with this pale pink paint from IndigoBlu. And again, I'm just using a little paintbrush here to add this on. Now, of course, you could use any colour paint here. And you don't have to use paint in its liquid form. You could use Posca pens, you could use alcohol inks, you could use your distress reinkers. But whatever you use, you need to make sure it's dry before you then add the top layer to take the pull. So I'm just cleaning off my brayer on a scrap of paper, and then I've added this lilac colour. And you can see my ink wasn't 100% dry. There is still a little bit of black smudging around in there, maybe off my brayer. But then when I go ahead and take this pull, I'm really, really happy with this one. I love how it turned out. So I'm just using my hands to make sure that I've got good even pressure all over it. And then I just love this. I love how the flowers add to the background with the text and the texture. So yeah, we're going to turn this one into a card today. So first of all, to do that, I'm just going to trim it down. I like to trim off all that white space first of all, just so that I can see the print a little bit more clearer. And then I like to go ahead and trim it down to size. So I'm going to cut this down to 5¼ inches squared today. And I've got a matte layer of black cardstock, which is 5½ inches squared. I'm working on a shop bought 6x6 card blank, so it is slightly smaller than 6x6 in the UK. But yeah, whatever works, whatever matte layers work for you, just give it a go. So I'm just going to use some liquid glue just to stick these layers together and then attach that to the card blank. And then once we've done that, we can then play around with the layout. And I just find it easier. Once you've got it mounted to a card, you can then play around with your layout. So I've got this bird, this is from the Sketchy Birds 2 stamp set, I believe, from Rubber Dance, and I've got this sentiment, which I thought I was going to use, but you'll see as we go through this video I end up not using it. I do decide that I'm going to need some texture behind the bird, so I've got some black cotton thread, so I'm just going to cut some of that off with my scissors, and then I'm going to add a little bit of rice paper behind the bird, just so that it doesn't get completely lost in the background. With the rice paper, I'm going to come in and do some stamping on it. I'm going to again use that postcard stamp from the Mix It Up 6 stamp set, because I just think it needs a little bit of extra interest on the rice paper. I don't want the rice paper just to kind of look out of place. I really want it to all be cohesive when it's together. So I'm just again going to add some stamping to the rice paper. To stamp on the rice paper, I'm going to use some Memento black ink, just because the VersaFine Clair is a pigment ink, so it takes a little bit longer to dry, whereas the Memento ink is a dye-based ink and it is going to dry almost instantly. So I didn't want to be waiting for more drying time. I'm just going to tear off some of the edges around the rice paper just to add a little bit of extra texture and interest, and then I'm going to go ahead and just stick that down. So I'm kind of playing around with my layout. I know that I want the cotton thread on there, but I'm still undecided about the sentiment. So this is my little box of collage fodder that is made with Rubber Dance products, and I'm just kind of going through it, and I end up deciding that none of that's going to work for this project. So I'm going to use this stamp that says Journey, again from the Mix It Up 6 stamp set, and I'm going to heat emboss this in some white embossing powder, and I'm going to do this a few times just in case one of them doesn't turn out right, but also so that I can then add these to my collage box as well, so that they're ready for future projects. I'm using the regular white embossing powder today. Normally I like to use the super fine, but I feel like this is a bold enough sentiment that the regular is going to work just fine, and I'm just making sure that my heat tool is nice and hot before I then go ahead and heat set this from behind, just so that if you struggle to heat emboss black cardstock, heating from underneath stops the powder blowing around. So if you're struggling, maybe try that. If you just heat set from underneath, you get a much smoother embossed finish, and it does stop the powder blowing around, especially when you're using colour cardstock and you don't want the powder to show elsewhere. So I'm just going to add a little bit of matte medium to the rice paper. I've just stuck that down on a slight angle. I'm going to do the same with the thread. I've just added a little bit of glue in the middle, and then I'm going to add some foam tape on the back of the bird. So the foam tape will then hold all of that cotton thread in place as well as the glue, so that it's got extra hold. For the sentiment, I'm going to add a little bit of foam tape on the edge that's going to be off the bird, and then a little bit of liquid glue on the part that's going to have contact with the bird. And then that is the finished card for today. So thank you so much for joining me. I really hope that you've enjoyed this project. I hope that it's inspired you to dig out your gel plate and try it with your stamps and see what you can create. It's a great way of creating your own background paper. More details will be found on the Rubber Dance blog, and as always, all the products that I've used will be listed in the description box below. Please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you've enjoyed this video, and consider subscribing if you've not already, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.